Hello and welcome everyone. As we can see, there are still 2 minutes until it's 2 o'clock, so we will just wait these 2 minutes and then we'll get started at the hour. But please stay put and we'll get started in just 2 minutes. So let's see then. Hello everyone and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Sebastian Lennartson, and I am the commercial trainer for Microsoft in the Nordics. So my responsibility lies within the SMB section of our product offering, which of course then includes Microsoft and Windows 10 Pro and Microsoft 365 Business Standard. So of course we've teamed up with our friends at Tech Data for today's webinar, which is a series of webinars under the concept of Get Ready, which we're running together with Also to promote our products and make sure that we are ready to meet our customers and make sure that they are up to speed and up to date in terms of what they're using and how they're using their Microsoft and Windows products. Today's webinar is going to be a full hour where we've divided it into a first 30 minutes where we're going to talk more sales oriented, the actual Windows 10 product offering, but most of all, how we can drive refresh. Because as we know, there are a lot of people out there who are already using Windows 10 Pro, which of course we are really happy about. But we want to look into how we can increase the refresh rate, because what we are seeing is that people are on a very modern operating system, but the products they are running are not as modern. So therefore, we're just going to look into that. The other 30 minutes are going to be more focused on the technical aspects of the security in Windows 10 Pro, and more important, the autopilot concept, which for those who haven't heard about it before, is a very simple way to get started on Windows 10 Pro and migrate all users, but also repurpose and so to speak, roll out updates on an operative system. So that is what we're going to touch base on today. And with that being said, I'd like to extend once again my warmest welcome to today's webinar, and let's get to it. Because the reality of the landscape that we are in now has of course been really crystallized by the whole COVID situation in 2020, where we had to start working from remote. This led to a change in the whole mindset of how companies have to operate and how we have to collaborate. So as of October 2020, PwC has conducted a study where they concluded that 77% of Swedish top executives are counting on a permanent change in the way that we work from a distance. That means that we might not have the same 5 days a week at the office collaborating together, and This also in extension means that we have to facilitate for solutions which helps the employee to work remotely, but also for the IT department to roll out updates and to manage the whole ecosystem from a distance. And that is exactly what we're going to touch base on today. So if you have customers out there who are in a transformative business, then this is the webinar for you, because we are going to look into exactly how we can help them increase their possibility and their business opportunity together with Microsoft and Windows. Because as we all know, the IT departments has kind of operated in a very traditional way in a modern environment. They have spent a lot of time on producing imaging, managing the traditional PC lifecycle, and controlling updates, making sure that the users are protected, etc. So the reality is that we are still living sort of in a way of classical / traditional IT, but we want to take that one step further. We want to transform how the IT department can operate and how they can manage the ecosystem that they're dealing with. And that can be done by, of course, migrating more towards the cloud and with modern cloud solutions, which enables the IT department to manage easier and faster than ever before. So first and foremost, we're just going to look into a little bit about Windows 10 Pro, because as you know, it's been around for quite a while, and we pride ourselves with seeing that it's over 90% that are in the Nordic region that has migrated to Windows 10 Pro. I think if we count together all the Nordic countries, we'd say there's a 91% conversion rate in terms of what operative system or what version of Windows they are using. So this, of course, is great, but that also means that we roughly have around 800,000, 700,000 units in the Nordic region, which are still running on Windows 7 and Windows 8. So there is a huge, of course, business potential in converting these users to Windows 10 Pro. But with that being said, we of course also recognize the fact that many of the roughly 9% that are not on Windows 10 Pro, they are still on Windows 7 due to very large organization with very rigid regulations, which refrains them from upgrading. But it's still really important to have that discussion with customers, because there is a lot of users who are still out there on Windows 7 and Windows 8 and is missing out on a lot of the opportunity that Windows 10 Pro has to offer. And if you are in a situation where you talk to an SMB user who is on Windows 7 out of comfort, it's really good to know that the Windows 7 operative system is of course end of life, which means that it's not a secure platform to use for them. So I'd highly recommend in those scenarios that they do consider upgrading together with you. Because when you are on a legacy OS, you have these kind of problems where you don't harvest the potential and the productivity that a modern OS can offer you. What we could see already in 2016 was that a SMB owner spent roughly 33 hours a month, and this is worldwide stats, of course, but we're talking 33 hours a month that they have to spend on administrative tasks. This means that they lose a lot of potential where they could instead use their time to create business streams and potential new business for their company. This means that they are in essence losing money by not being on the most productive tool there is. And this is one of the main things that we're going to look into now. Because it's easy to think that upgrading to a new device or a new OS would only be attached to a cost. But reality is that being on an old device or an old OS is actually even more costly. And how is that even possible? Well, first and foremost, we got to look at the maintenance cost of having an old device, because a PC older than 4 years could potentially cost around 1.5 times as much as a modern PC. And we've ran our stats and we ran the numbers. This would convert to around 1,300 euros per year per unit. Of course, that is dependent on how old the device is, but that is an estimate from the actuals of how old the devices that we can see on the market, how old they are, and what maintenance they have to go through. But also, it's a fact of when you're doing maintenance on older devices, you have to, for example, bring it to the IT department. You have to make sure that the IT department rolls out the updates and all of the necessary maintenance, and they have to do that very manually. What does this mean? Well, of course, that means that there's a decreased productivity cost, meaning that we are losing out on productivity. We have to focus on this manual, traditional way of managing our IT solutions instead of focusing on creating new solutions and increasing our revenue in other areas. This means that we spend roughly around two times as much time on managing our old units than we would if we had a device that's newer than 4 years old. So by having an old device, we're actually spending double the time on managing it, which means that we lose half of our work week to not being able to create this new potential business and creating new potential business streams. This cost, we've also summed it up, and it is roughly around 800 euros per year per device. So being an SMB with a device as the one I've shown you in the start slide, the HP Compact, if you're an SMB using those kind of devices with 1 gigabyte of RAM and a HDD hard disk, you're for sure one of those businesses who are already losing roughly 2,000 euros per year, and we've only gone through half of the costs. The second cost is a much larger one. And I think everyone attending this call is aware of how expensive a security breach could be. We know that not everyone will be the victim of a cyber attack. But we also know that roughly 50% of all SMB companies are actually counting on being or suffering from a breach or a cyber attack. If we do the numbers on what a cyber attack actually would cost if it occurs, then we're talking a really astonishing number. We're talking around 60,000 euros in the average cost of a cyber attack and a breach. This means that if you're the victim of it, if you're on a device that's so old that you actually are an easy target for the hackers, well, the potential loss and the potential cost this sums up to could be catastrophic for your business. And the final one, which of course many who are on legacy devices experience but don't think about, and that is the limited performance cost. If we look at a device that's 5 years old, they are actually 2.5 times slower and have 3 times less battery than a modern device. And just simple stuff as waking up time is 4 times slower. So this means that you have to spend a lot of time just waiting for your computer to do the bare essentials. And you don't have the possibility to work from, well, one, you could fly from the airport or from ever you were when you're on a traveling business. You simply don't have that possibility with a legacy device due to it not being as long-lived in terms of battery, etc., etc. So the old devices is not a way of actually saving money, but just as likely a way of losing money. So therefore, upgrading is not only attached to a cost, but it's also attached to decreasing potential cost and increasing possibility to earn money elsewhere than managing your already existing IT. So what we're seeing is, of course, and this is actually a bit outdated as well, these numbers, but it's pretty interesting to see that we are having a 50% increase on collaborative activities already in 2016. And of course, as you know, 2020 has done a whole lot to this number as well and increased it by multiple folds. So what we want to do is, of course, talk to our customers and see and make sure that they are actually meeting their demand of collaboration tool, because they are demanding it and they are needing it, but they are sometimes not acknowledging this need. So therefore, it's really important to just talk to the customer and make sure that they actually acknowledge it themselves. With that being said, we are going to look into some market trends here in the EMEA, because it's really important to understand where we are going. But first, we need to see what we're trying to sell. Because what we really want to do, of course, is to make sure that every customer, when they buy something from you, they don't just buy, for example, Windows 10 Pro, or they don't just buy a device without the right operative system, but they also buy Microsoft 365 for Business. And for those of you who have joined my previous webinars, you all know that, of course, you get the biggest gain by bundling up Windows 10 Pro, a modern device, and Microsoft 365 Business Standard. But when we talk about this, there might also be some skepticism around converting from Windows 7 to Windows 10 Pro. What might be good to know then is, of course, that 99% of all applications that run on Windows 7 is running on Windows 10 Pro. So that might give the SMB customer an ease of mind, knowing that they don't have to change their third-party applications or whatever it might be just because they are converting. But what could be good for them to know is the fact that we are seeing huge challenges in workplaces who are on legacy devices. We see that around 61% of workers find it difficult to collaborate with colleagues due to being on a legacy device with an aged or legacy IT solution. So bringing them up to speed would of course minimize these numbers. It is also a fact of attracting young people and the next generation of workers. Because fact is that millennials are having different habits when it comes to workplace and changing roles. They are much more likely to quit. They are much more likely to seek other positions, and they are much more, to be honest, a bit harder to please. So therefore, making sure that you are not on a legacy solution, make sure that you can attract the younger people as well to your workplace, because the number speaks for themselves. Almost half of all millennials who are on a legacy workplace are actually thinking about changing position within the next year and a half or year. And that also means when we're on the legacy workplace that we spend too much time waiting for information from others. And a great example for this, if we want to concretize how a modern workplace helps you, let's say we're in a situation where I'm collaborating on a document. And traditionally, we would send this document back and forth. That is the real reason behind this 3.5 hours per week that is spent waiting for information from others. The fact that I'm trying to finalize a spreadsheet, but I need some input from my boss or from a peer or whoever it might be. With a modern solution, you do have the Windows 10 Pro and of course the Microsoft 365. That's how I would define a modern solution. Once you have those two tools, you could easily just share a link for the OneDrive copy of the spreadsheet. This means that you always have an up-to-date spreadsheet and you don't have to wait for your boss or your peer or whoever it might be for them to send it back to you, because the second they have written in the number into the spreadsheet, you will see it on your computer as well, because everything is shared via the cloud. So it's just a really intuitive and really easy way to make sure that you're always up to speed and you save a lot of time being more efficient in your collaborations. This also, of course, reduces the final number, which is the amount of employees who are actually likely to quit due to having outdated, aka old, technology on their workplace. So what are the trends that we are seeing in EMEA? Well, first and foremost, we were calculating on the fact that it will grow in 2020, the IT spendings all over EMEA, and such is the case. Of course, we see companies struggling with their profitability due to the COVID situation, but overall, we see a huge need for modernizing their IT solutions. What we're actually seeing, as we can see on the right-hand side, is the fact that in the PC market, if we add up the medium, small, and micro businesses, they are accountable for a much larger part, 58% of the PC market, which is the SMB customers. This means that everyone attending this call, of course, we are talking the major part of the IT spendings that is going into the PC market within the SMB segment. When it comes to the amount of business that this actually accounts for, we are talking, I can't even see the number on the enterprise. I think it is 6% or something that is enterprise business, but 92% plus the medium and small businesses is accountable within the EMEA market. So this means that we have a huge potential in amount of business, amount of spending, and also share of PC that is going towards the SMB segment. So it's really important to just talk to your customers out there and make sure that they are up to date on and making sure that when they want to invest and increase their spendings on IT, you make sure that you propose the right solution for them and that it is via you that they actually modernize their IT and structure. And what I also want to take time and show you is exactly what they are spending their money on, because it is a growing market overall, but we can also see that there are some areas where we have a year-over-year decline, and that is first and foremost on the detachable and on the notebook segment. But what we, on the other hand, is seeing is that the convertible and of course the ultra slim segment of these are having a much larger increase. So we can notice that the trend in EMEA is of course to increase in terms of convertible PCs and the slim PCs. The all-in-one segment is of course also growing, but I think the true heroes when it comes to remote and flexible work is the convertible and ultra slim units. So one could think, of course, that we are seeing great trends where a lot of people are modernizing, the IT spendings are increasing by a lot. But fact of the matter is that many of the units that are being sold are not modern. So in 2019, 61% of commercial PCs were not as we would define a modern PC. And I'm going to show you exactly a little bit what I'm thinking when I talk about modern PC in a while. but it is mainly about the form factor, mainly about the flexibility, and mainly about the usability of the unit. This means that even though we're seeing a lot of companies buying new units, they are not buying the most modern one. So this means that they are actually losing some of the productivity possibilities that they would gain from getting a modern unit instead of a older new unit, so to speak. I'm going to throw this number in here just for you to think about. Oh, in EMEA, we have a 3.8-year PC refresh rate. And I'm going to get back to PC refresh rate in a little bit. But before that, we are just going to look at the non-modern PCs, because this is the landscape as we are seeing it from a Microsoft perspective as the hero product of fiscal year 21 for us, which in other words means half of 2020 and half of 2021. So of course we're having from all our different deliveries, we have a lot of very thin, very powerful units that are of course convertible. We're talking X360 mainly, and here we have units which has Face ID, which has touch, which has the pen function, etc., etc. It's units that make sure that the employees can get started and work from anywhere at any time, which is, of course, in 2020, one of the biggest obstacles for companies with legacy IT solutions. I've even heard of a few companies where the employees had to get a cab paid from corporate to go get their desktop from the office in the beginning of COVID. We of course understand the need of desktops for those who have very high demands on power, but mainly what we want to see is employees converting to the more modern PC solution, such as these that I can show you now. But we want to, of course, increase the refresh rate on these. We want to make sure that the companies buy the most modern PCs there are. We want to make sure that they buy the right ones for their need, which is often a bit more extensive than they might think. And one of the key barriers to upgrading to a really, really modern and really premium device is not that they don't have the need for the most advanced devices, but it is often a matter of cost. Imagining if you're buying 75 PCs for your not newly started, but perhaps younger SMB company, you do have a lot of business, but you can't really take all of the profit and all of your spendings and place that into buying new PCs for everyone at the office. Then we come back to the refresh rate. We come back to making sure that you're not one of the 61% who buy the legacy or the older, not modern device. And one of the ways that we are battling this is, of course, with device as a service. And for those of you who haven't heard about device as a service before, I'm going to take a few minutes to just talk about what device as a service is. Because device as a service for us is a way to deliver a whole solution, not only support and services, but the whole solution with the hardware itself as well. This means that you as resellers, instead of only attaching your services and your solutions, you are also providing them with the hardware as a service. So instead of the companies buying the hardware from you, they instead lease the hardware together with everything else that they need in their solution. It is a great way because you as company, well, what do you gain? You gain a possibility to extend your offering. You increase the value of your monthly revenue. You also have a chance to make sure that your customers are constantly updated with the latest type of solutions, the latest PCs, etc. Because 3.8 year in EMEA is actually one of the leading numbers when it comes to refresh rates. If we look worldwide, we are above 4 years in refresh rate. So it is great that we are at only 3.8 years, but we want to make sure that we're also on a modern device. And as a way of converting people to the most modern, most powerful, and most flexible devices, which for the honesty is of course a bit pricier than the others, well, then it's a great way to offer them device as a service, because this means that the customers get a possibility to get the best solutions for their business and that they are constantly up to date. This means that instead of them owning the devices, buying them and keeping them for 6 years, they just lease them from you. And in return, you get a great revenue each month, and you actually have the possibility to then refurbish and lease the computer to another customer, or sell them onwards to somewhere else, depending on what your needs are and what you wish to do. But it is a great business model for all of us, and is of course the step in the right direction towards creating a circular society where we take care of what we're producing and not just think of it as a single use until end of life and then dispose the product, but instead just reusing, and in a way more of a shared economics thought. What we're seeing with device as a service is the fact that we believe and have market trends that give us a suggestion that 30% of all PCs will be purchased through device as a service in 5 or 4 years time from now, actually. In other words, 30% will be, if you'd like it, leased. But we of course call it device as a service because you don't only lease the device, you package it with the whole solution. If we look 3 years into the future, we can actually see a 7-fold increase in the value of the device as a service market. So there's a huge increase that you have the possibility to jump onto and to be a part of, because the business streams that this market actually creates is very, very attractive. And with that being said, we are going to look a bit into the target customers and what the customer benefits are from device as a service. And the typical customer for device as a service is not limited to being an SMB customer, an enterprise customer, or a newly started single person entrepreneurial firm. It is about their needs. And if the customer has a focus on being flexible and being adaptive, then device as a service is a great solution for them. It's not only about minimizing their initial spendings and getting a more overseeable pricing, but it's also about for them to have a simple possibility to scale up and make sure that they are always on top of their business. So if they're perhaps a newly started company, device as a service offers great possibility for them to scale up if they have the future needs, which they can't predict right now. But if they have the future need to scale up, device as a service is the perfect solution, because then they're just a call away from you when they need 10 new devices with operative systems and of course Microsoft 365 and your IT solutions, whatever it might be. So the customer gains of this is of course that they get a very predictable pricing. They know exactly how much this is going to cost them month per month, and not as a lump sum in the beginning, and then the possibility of having high maintenance costs some point in the future, or having to roll out an expensive update some point in the future. They know exactly how much it's going to be. As many are doing today with their mobile phones, they are on a model where they're paying a monthly fee instead of buying the phone and then looking into the options of what supplier and or what carrier, so to speak. So it's a great way of doing kind of the same, but kind of a better value and a more extensive value for the customer, where we are offering more of a solution for them, which makes them have to worry less about managing their IT structure and they can focus more on creating business and working on whatever their focus is. So that is the core value of device as a service. And it builds on the fact that we want to supply modern commercial devices, which are the top tier devices and the devices that are the right one for the company's actual use. So we want to create a solution where they don't have to refrain from upgrading to the latest solution due to costs or due to anything else. We want to facilitate the solution where it's just as simple for them to upgrade their whole IT infrastructure as it would have been to sign up to get a new phone. And it's also a way for them to get the control and manageability of their payments, making sure that they now already pre-hand how much is my IT spending is going to be the upcoming 4 years, instead of the uncertainty of today and the uncertainty if I am successful in my business. How do I scale up? Do I have to hire someone who's responsible for my IT solution, etc., etc. So device as a service is the best way to go there. And that kind of brings us back here. Many of you have probably seen this photo before. It is one of the most seen pictures on this planet. It is, of course, the dashboard that you remember from Windows XP, because it all starts with Windows, no matter if they buy it from you as a device as a service solution, if they call in because they want to upgrade their legacy device, or if they are having problem starting Microsoft 365 Business Standard on their Windows 7 unit. We want to start with talking about Windows 10 Pro and how they would actually benefit from migrating to Windows 10 Pro. Then comes, of course, the modern devices, the whole essence of getting the full potential from your OS and your employees. And then finally, attaching the Microsoft 365 Business Standard and your products and service offerings. This can either be done separately, but together, or by offering device as a service. With that being said, we are going to look into more of the security aspects and how to easily deploy Windows 10 Pro. And of course, many of you are thinking that we already have a lot of users who have adapted Windows 10 Pro, which would make this section, of course, overflow. But it is also about managing, repurposing, and rolling out updates on Windows 10 Pro. So it is of great value, even though you might have all of your customers out there already on Windows 10 Pro. Before we get started on that, we're just going to look into the security aspects of Windows 10 Pro, because we released Windows 10 Pro as a way to make sure that our users out there are staying safe from the modern type of threats that we are seeing. Before, we would annually or biannually send out a new version. We would go from Windows 8 to Windows 8.1, etc., etc. With Windows 10 Pro, we don't talk about other versions or Windows 7 to Windows 8. We're not going to go to Windows 11 Pro as we would have done traditionally in the same sense. We are instead looking into a solution where we constantly update Windows 10 Pro. That is done during nighttime to make sure that it doesn't interfere with work hours, but as a way of making sure that the user is always up to date and always has the cutting edge protection from any malware and attacks. It is also about, of course, protecting the identity and information, and that is done via modern solutions such as Face ID and, of course, encrypting data on the device. So Windows 10 Pro is, of course, the best operative system for SMB user because it is the only way for them to truly comply to GDPR and other data protection regulations, and making sure that their own data and their customer data is safe on their device. To really concretize this, we're going to look into the Windows 7 security features. In terms of device protection, we had the trusted platform model and the Windows Update. We had a firewall, of course. And then in terms of information protection, we had the BitLocker. If you instead on a legacy device update to Windows 10 Pro, you do get the trusted boot. You get Microsoft Edge with all of its malware detections. You get Windows Defender, and you get the hello, which means that you sign in with your face instead of a password, because a password is really easy for a hacker to just steal from notes on your phone, but a face is much harder to replicate. So it is a way of making sure that the users are safe and in a truly safe environment. But as I mentioned, 61% are only updating to a modern but older device. This is what happens when you go to Windows 10 Pro on a modern device, meaning that you actually have the latest type of devices, the one that is at least newer than 4 years old. And this is the type of benefits that you get then. There are a lot of discussions out there regarding, do you still need to have third-party antivirus apps? And I can only speak for myself, but I only have Windows 10 Pro on a modern device with Microsoft 365 Business Standard, and I feel completely reliant that that will protect me. But it is a way of making sure that our customers are always on the cutting edge, best possible and latest protection for their units and their data. So in that essence, the best thing for all of our customers out there would be to always be upgraded to the latest and greatest, which of course could be self-explanatory. But I think it's just a great reminder to make sure that your customers not only update to Windows 10 Pro on a legacy device, and that they not only get a modern device and forget about getting Microsoft 365, so that they have a modern business device and then they get Windows 10 Home and Microsoft 365 Home and Student, because then they are losing these great benefits that the device actually facilitate for them. So make sure that all of your customers, when they upgrade to the right operative system and the right type of software added to that for the best possible protection. With that being said, I'm just going to show you a brief video about Device Guard. Let's see if we can get this video started. There we are. And Device Guard, of course, if we look into Windows 7, where we didn't have Device Guard, all you do is that you would open a file and all of a sudden you are breached. But with Device Guard, as we can see in this video on Windows 10 Pro, you would instead open the attachment, but instead of the attachment opening, the Device Guard would pre-scan it and send out the dialog telling you that unfortunately you cannot open it due to malware being a part of the the attachment. So this is a way where I'm going to try to visualize this, because in the traditional stack, you would have the device hardware and you'd have a single protection. If someone managed to get within that protection, the whole IT system was exposed and they could do pretty much whatever they wanted and roam free. Just as we saw in the video, they only had to send an attachment including a malware and you are breached. And this can be compared to the medieval cities where we had only a single wall protecting the city from outside threats. With Windows 10 Pro, of course, we want to change this. We want to make sure that different parts of the OS and the whole IT is secluded from one another with their own protection. This means if we want to draw the parallel to a city once again, that the OS is protected by multiple layers. So every information that you have on your computer, depending on the security classification of it, it is stored in a separate way. Therefore, making sure that even if you breach through one place, you don't get access to everything at once for anyone to just roam freely through. So it is a great way of making sure that your customers stay protected. And to truly visualize this, you can see the French city of Carcassonne, where they of course built a much more advanced protection than they did in Dubrovnik with the multiple layers. And exactly like that, we are building up Windows 10 Pro to have the security layers to make sure that not a single breach can access all of the information on the unit. With that being said, we're going to look into the final part of today's presentation, which is Windows Autopilot. And Windows Autopilot, for those of you who have heard about it, and for those who haven't, well, it's not about flying airplanes and flight simulation, even though one could almost hope so, but it is about having a more intuitive and easier way to manage your IT. Traditionally, as we mentioned before, a lot of time in the IT department was spent on creating images, rolling out updates manually, and installing different type of attachments. With Autopilot, we are trying to make that even more simple. And to be honest, the results has been very good. What we're seeing is that we are saving the IT department multiple times, or we're seeing a multiple decrease in time spent on managing and rolling up updates. So what you do is that instead of the IT department receiving all of the hardware and then installing the unique software image to each device, we instead want to create a solution where the IT department only creates a image of a virtual machine, which is then rolled out automatically via the cloud to the hardware, which is in the hand of the user, of the employee. This means that the IT department does not have to receive the new hardware from factory to install the updates, but instead the factory can actually ship immediately to the actual employee, and the employee will only download the operative system or the image, so to speak, that the IT department has provided. And it also means that the IT department can monitor and manage the whole IT ecosystem from a distance. And that is exactly the tools that we need to create the best possible solutions now that we are moving to a more distanciated workflow and way of doing business. Autopilot has also been proven actually to increase security, and that is by enabling the IT department to remotely control their IT infrastructure. For example, it's a possibility for the IT department to remotely lock a device, but also to make sure that they can secure a device that has potentially been breached, but without even being in the same room as the device itself. What we've also seen is that employee satisfaction, of course, increases by multiple times, because when you need assistance, it is not a nice experience to be in 2020 due to COVID at home and have your computer not working and you actually have to travel to work. And in some countries, you couldn't even travel to work. So therefore, we are facilitating a solution that makes it so much more simple for the users to get the IT support and the help they need to never lose productivity in their work. So what Autopilot actually does is just that you send up a copy of the software that you want to deploy to the users to the cloud, which the users then download, as I mentioned. This means that the IT department has to spend less time with managing and rolling out updates, and instead can focus on renewing and modernizing the IT infrastructure. This slide is a bit cluttery, I know, but I just want to show you a bit about how it works. Normally, you would use either Microsoft 365 Business Center, you could use Intune, and you can also use Azure to make sure that you deploy the image towards the users. It is really simple for the employee to just go in to the link that you provide them and download the new solution, or the new operative system, so to speak. So being on Autopilot, of course, provides a much more simple solution for the users to make sure that they can always get the latest and greatest operative system, the latest updates, without even having to go and visit the IT department. If you want to find out more, you of course can, and depending on what solution, but you should be able to click these links, depending on, there might be some restrictions, but if you want to find out more about Windows Autopilot, you can just immediately point at the links in the window, and there you would then open up a new browser window where you can read more about Windows Autopilot and what it actually could do for you. With that being said, I am going into the final area of today's presentation, which is an encouragement for those of you who want to find out more about Attach and also about Windows, to go to Expert Zone. And many of you might already be on Expert Zone. Others may not have heard of it. But Expert Zone is our tool where we provide curated and relevant information for our resellers and partners in the Nordics to make sure that you get the right type of information for your business needs. Because normally it's easy to just Google or Bing, but what you can end up doing is finding information that's from a blog post that's perhaps 10 years old or 5 years old, and where there has been changes, or that the information in regards is not applicable for our market. So by being on Expert Zone, you make sure that you have the right type of information for your needs. If you want to learn more on Expert Zone, you can easily, once again, just click the link in the window, and I'll also make sure to leave them in chat by the end of the webinar. But with that being said, I would like to see if there has been any questions in the chat, which there has not, but please, if you do have any questions, make sure to just write them in the chat and I will answer them as soon as possible. Other than that, I would like to extend a big thank you for joining us here today. And please make sure to join our next webinar, which is on March 2nd between 2 and 3 o'clock. But other than that, thanks for those who joined us here today, and I wish you a great Tuesday.